Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, we're back on the hood for that 1950 Chevy truck, and the last time you saw it, we were spraying primer on the underside. Today we're going to work on the top side. Off camera, I went ahead and sanded it. I do a little filling here and there, but it's been sanded with 220, 320, and to 400, so it's basically ready for some color and clear, but we won't spray that till the top's ready for color and clear as well. So let's take a quick tour of what I got done while you guys were away, and then we'll flip this thing over and get to work on the top side. Okay, so we had a few little spots over here. I did have to do some glazing. After I sanded it, they showed up, some areas showed up, so I got a little glaze on there, got those blocked out real nice, and then spot primed them. Also over on the big area where we took that speaker dent out, I sanded that real well, and then I went through in a few spots, had to do a little touch up. So we did a little bit of spot priming, but not a lot. But we got this thing cleaned up really nice. It's really smoothed out. Like I said, I sanded it to 400. Started with 220. Now, polyester primers and these heavy build primers, they do not lay down super smooth, so you're going to have some orange peel. So you need to go in the steps. So I went to 220 and got it all flattened out real nice. Then went to 320 dry and then 400 dry. I love wet sanding, but with this current weather, I could not guarantee that this polyester primer would dry sufficiently in the sun. So I just dry sanded everything. You got to be careful, guys. That moisture will get down inside there, and it takes a while for it to heat and get back out if you don't have a nice warm day. So be cautious of that. Okay guys, since we did so much work previously on the top of the hood, blocking it out, sanding, filling all the chips and everything, we really don't have a lot of work to do before we can start spraying primer, which is nice. But what we will do is we're going to go over the whole hood, every square inch of it, with just a block. I'm going to use the foam block. We already flattened everything out, so I'm not worried about trying to smooth anything out. We're just trying to make sure it's well sanded. So I'll just use a block and some dry 220, and we'll go over the whole thing really well, all throughout the curves and everything. And when I was spraying the lips here, when it was flipped over, some primer, shot up on this side, so I want to sand that. That's dry spray. You want to make sure you sand that off thoroughly. It'll only take a second. And then we're just going to go over and make sure everything's done really well. I'm going to pay special attention to where the molding sits. That strip was never removed, all those paint jobs. So I want to make sure that's cleaned and scuffed and ready for primer. And then we're going to start off right off the bat just by sanding this primer we put on when it was flipped over, just to give me a little head start here. So I'm just going to use the block on that. Remember, we smoothed and shaped this already, so we are just trying to get sand scratches out at this point. So I want to sand this really well and make sure nothing pops up that might be a problem. And we might even just do a little dry guide coat on it just to see if we missed anything, and we can fix it right now before we start putting primer on it. So I'm going to go ahead and get to work on sanding this, and I'll move you in close. We'll get the dry guide coat out and see how we did, make sure we didn't miss any major scratches or little ripples or anything. Okay, I went over it with the 220 real quick, just to knock a little bit of the orange peel off and just smooth it out a little bit so the dry guide coat can do its job. So let's just go ahead and cover this thing up here and see how we did. Okay, I got it covered pretty nicely, and I can already see some spots popping up. So, and that's the beauty of this stuff. Really helps you find it so you don't have that uh-oh moment later when you're spraying color and clear. So here's a spot right here. That's just, I can see heavy sand scratches right there, and I got a little spot over here, but overall it doesn't look bad. So let's get the 220 after it and see what pops up, see how well we did on this thing. Okay, knowing that that's there, I'm going to go ahead, and I didn't put a lot of primer on this thing. I just basically hit it once and called it good because it was upside down. But that polyester primer does a really nice job of filling, so we'll see how well it does. Okay, so we can see already, you can see all those lines in there. Those are all sand scratches that the primer's trying to fill, okay? So we want to sand and make sure those get totally out of there. And I can see some high and low spots right here that, that are concerning me a little bit. So I'm probably going to go ahead and switch over to a little heavier grit sandpaper so I can be sure to smooth this out even more, because I can see a little ripple there, and that's not good. But that's right at our transition. So we have plenty of material we can sand if we run all the way deep, too deep, and we can just put a little more primer on if we have to. But we should be able to get this out real nice. So I'm going to go ahead and sand the rest of it real quick with the 220. Then I'm going to switch over to something a little coarser to get some of this off, to smooth this and flatten it, because I can see something right there too that bothers me. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of this sanded up, and then we'll take a look at it, and then we'll hit it with the coarser sandpaper just to get that worked out. And then we can switch back to something a little finer. Okay, I got a lot more light on it to make sure you guys can see. I put a piece of 120 peel and stick on this foam block, and you can, now I'm sure you can see all these spots, but you can see a little bit of a line there and a little bit of a line here, kind of almost like an undulation. And I know that's right where our transition is. So all I have to really do is sand across here. Not a lot of pressure, but a fair amount of speed. And that'll allow it to hit the high spots and start taking those down instead of going in and out of them. And this 120 will take this down quick. That's why we go through the steps. Let the sandpaper do the work instead of you forcing it down into a groove or a low spot. And just like that, you can see all that is gone in just, what was that, 30 seconds, 20 seconds? So always go through the steps of paper, guys. You know, I used to jump around. I was young and cheap, and I wouldn't buy what I needed, and I would be worried about using it up. And sandpaper's cheap in the long run. Trust me, I've got tendonitis from using my arms too much. But this looks really good right here. I'm really happy that came right out just with the primer. We can see a little bit of a glazing showing right there. So now I'm just going to work the rest of this real quick. And we've got a couple issues over here I want to deal with, but I think this is going to come together nicely. So I'll hit it with this 120, we'll switch back to the 220, and then we'll get to work on the rest of it. Okay guys, that's looking really nice. I'm really happy the way that came together so quickly. I got a spot over here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to put some more glazing in there. I don't like the way that feels. Both sides are kind of the same. It kind of puckers in right there, but I'm going to go ahead and get that filled. I think it's too low, but we'll wait on that. So now we can switch right back to the 220 and kind of go over this whole area. And now we know there's no sand scratches, nothing deep. The next coat of primer will take care of everything, and we'll be really good. We don't have to worry about going through or anything else. We just keep sanding like we got a purpose here, and that's to get this nice and shaped out really sweet. All right, that's looking really good. We're going to wait to get some glazing on this until we've sanded the whole hood. We may have one or two little spots that show up, so we'll want to do them all at the same time. So this is looking really good. Let's back away and get to work on some of these other areas, and we can shoot some primer on this thing here pretty soon as we get this filled and any other spots that need it. Okay, I got everything sanded really well, and some of you may be wondering, Mark, you already blocked out the whole hood, Darren sanded it, why are you sanding it again? Two reasons. Contaminants from me handling it, having it around here, and also when you block it, you're going to get the high spots, but you may miss the low spots and they may not be sanded sufficiently. So you remember the spot over here, we had that little low spot, we're going to count on the primer taking that out. So I got down in there and I made sure that was sanded really well. Some of these other areas I want to make sure they're sanded really well along these curves. It's just we're trying to get a good mechanical bond and we're trying to release any old crappy paint. You know, paint fades and deteriorates, you know, from the top down. So as we sand off all this old paint and old, you know, oxidization, we're actually getting back down to some good solid, you know, material that we can spray something on, like a polyester primer or epoxy primer, and it's going to adhere well, and it's going to be a good substrate for you to work on from there on up. So, you know, you think, well, I blocked it out. Well, make sure you go over it by hand just to make sure it's scuffed really well and really clean. So the last thing to do is I need to get down inside here, and I'm going to use the 220 for down inside this strip, because there's some little signs of little rust here and that, and it's kind of dirty, so I want to make sure it's good and clean. Then we're going to zoom in tight, and we're going to scuff this up and get that filled. I didn't find any other spot that needs any glazing, so we'll make a little tiny batch, get that filled, roll it out in the sun, let it kick off real quick, get it sanded, and mix up some primer. Okay guys, I didn't find any other areas that need a little touch up with some glazing. I actually had to dig around in my drawer to find one of these flexible spreaders. I just don't use them. I use the metal ones. But this one's going to come in handy right here. So I can push down and just get it to follow right around this corner really nice here. Metal one I can't get to bend that well. So I've already scuffed this area really well. So I know it's going to stick. And I'm going way bigger than I want to go. We're going to get it just like that, and we're going to call that good. You know me, I keep messing with it. There we go. I can actually see the low spot in the filler right there. So that's the whole idea. I'm going to scrape this off right here. Make it easy on me. Later. We'll get this off right here. Or try. Okay, so I'm going to roll that out in the sun. I think I'm going to take lunch and come back. We'll get that sanded, and then we'll mix up some primer. Okay, I finished lunch, brought it in from outside. I sanded some of this off here, up here, that we didn't need. So I'm going to do what I always tell you guys not to do, which is use your thumb or your fingers, because the way this is shaped, there's no way to get, because it does go in right there, and any block I try to use would just hit around the outside. So sometimes you have to resort to the old fingers. So that's what I'm going to do. I have a piece of 120 on here, right here, folded in half. And all I'm doing is just checking very, very frequently to make sure that I'm getting what I want. So I sanded over here, and we had that little low spot right there, so I got that sanded. And this is actually starting to come together pretty quick right here. That flexible spreader really kind of followed the contours of here and here to allow me to feather that out really nice. So it's actually coming together pretty quick. And I'm trying not to push down real hard. I'm just trying to let, you know, work my thumb in the shape of this, this panel right here. If you guys can tell, but we're getting back from the primer back into some of the filler, and there's a little kind of weird spot right there. I don't really feel it, but obviously it's there. All right, that's feeling pretty good right there. I'm liking that. Once we get primer on here, we're going to guide coat this whole hood anyways, and we'll find any spot that might not be perfect. So that will definitely, we'll be able to tell then. So I'm going to go ahead and finish sanding a little bit right here. We're going to get this thing blown off real well, and then tacked off, and then blown off and tacked off again, and then we'll get some primer on it. Okay guys, I got it kind of half rolled out of the shop here. I don't want to cover a bunch of stuff just like last time. So I'm going to put a coat over the whole hood, and then I'll go back, and you'll be able to see these because they'll absorb the solvent out of the primer. And so I'll go back and hit these spots we did some filling and some extra work on. That little low spot over there, I'll throw a little bit extra in there just in case. And then we'll go over the whole thing. And then once that's done, I'll go ahead and do the lips all the way around. I did paint that from the other side, but it's been sanded, so I'll hit it again. What I'll try to do is just get about a third of it so I don't get a bunch of overspray, what I've already sanded underneath. So let me get the gun going, get this respirator on, get this thing sprayed, and call it a day.
Now you guys can see this stuff doesn't put a very big pattern because it's so thick with the 1.4 millimeter tip. It's pretty viscous. So I hold the gun in a little tighter. I want to make sure I'm getting wet on wet with very little or no dry spray. And so it's wet right now, hasn't flashed off. I'm going to look it over and see if I see any big waves or any big problems. I don't really see any, which is good. There's some down the line here when it goes from the lip to no lip, but really all of those have that. We're going to see if we can't sand those out. But let me get the other half, and then we'll go back over the rest of the parts.
Okay, I mixed about 20 ounces up to spray this. Maybe I should have went with 16, but we'll have plenty to go over these bad spots. I'd rather have too much than have to mix up a little tiny batch to try to finish. So I'm going to let this flash off. Then I'm going to go around once it flashes off, and I'm going to spray up a little bit and get these edges really good to make sure we got good coverage. And then we're going to go back and hit some of these other areas that I know need a couple of different shots. Here, over there, definitely over there. And then some of these other spots I can kind of see. That little lip or that little low spot we found when we were blocking it with the longboard, I can actually see it right now. So it may be deeper than I thought it was. So we're going to go ahead and get that, but the dry guide coat will show that, so we'll be able to get it out one way or the other. Let's let this flash off, and we'll come back and we'll hit it again. Okay, it's looking really good. Like I said, I can see the spots that definitely need more. We're going to hit those for sure. Get that spot over there. I want to get a little bit more over here on a repair. And we're about ready to clean the gun. So let me get this sprayed on here. And then I'll bring you in close before it flashes off. We can check on our repair here, see how smooth and round it looks.
We feather edge that paint back, so we have to, I'll have to get an extra coat on there too. Let's get one more coat right here.
Okay, let's see if we can get an angle on this. Looks pretty round. I don't see any waves in it, so I think we did pretty good. All right, I'm going to let this flash off a little bit. I got a little bit left in the gun, so I'll hit those trouble spots and where we feather edged it just to make sure I have enough material. And then I can clean the gun and we'll call it a day. Okay guys, that pretty much wraps up this video on getting the top of the hood for that 50 Chevy truck. Get the final sand, had to do a little repair over here, and then prep everything else and get some polyester primer on it. And it's looking really good. I'm really happy with the way everything came out. I'm really stoked about how well this dent looks, or no, it's not a dent anymore, right? And then only one little spot way over here. I don't think I feather edged that paint on the chip where it was kind of chipping around that edge there. I don't think I feather edged it back far enough, but so I put one or two more extra coats of primer right there. Hopefully that holds it together and fix it. If not, we'll feather edge it out. We're gonna have to spot prime anyways later. This isn't the last time this hood's gonna see some primer. Next time you see it, we'll be doing some sanding, get the dry guide coat out, and we'll see exactly how smooth and flat this hood really is. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and keep sending those comments, guys. I really love getting them. I like interacting with all of you. It's a lot of fun for me and keeps me motivated. And mash that bell icon so you get notifications every time I release a new video. We'll see you on the next one.